Chapter 10. Some kind of communication. Agnes was spending the entire day out in the garden tending her medicinal herbs. She'd pulled her hair back in a ponytail and wore a wide-brimmed sun hat. To keep her dress from getting dirty, she also put on an apron and rolled back her sleeves. Normal attire for a commoner working the fields, but unthinkable for a count's daughter. Still, it posed no problem in her private gardens. It wasn't like she was off to a royal event dressed like this. So then, what was that young man with Prussian blue hair and dark gray eyes doing here?
Hello, Agnes.
Claude grinned down at her as she stiffened, dirty trowel in hand. Agnes had been working in her little medicinal herb garden located in the far back corner of the Lefort property. Claude may have been a prince, but even he couldn't just barge into a private residence unannounced. So clearly, someone must have shown him in, Agnes thought. The servants all knew that Agnes was working in the garden. Why didn't they show him to the drawing room to wait? Hello? Stammering, Agnes looked down at her shabby, disheveled self. Should she run and change? No. If Claude found her disgusting, then good. He'd dissolve their arrangement and then she'd be free. She'd miss the mushroom money, but it'd be worth it to have such a huge weight off her shoulders.
I was told you were out gardening. You really are, aren't you? Are all these herbs that you've planted yourself? Can I come closer?
No, you'll get all dirty. Agnes dropped the trowel and hurried over to Claude instead. Is there something I can help you with?
Oh, no. I just wanted to see you, Agnes. Do you always show those off?
What is he talking about? Agnes followed Claude's gaze down to her feet. Her white legs were bare, since she'd hiked her dress skirts above her knees. Oh, I'm sorry. This is terribly unladylike of me. She must have looked like a grubby farm worker to Claude's royal eyes. Still, he didn't seem to mind. The contract's still on then. Sighing, Agnes untucked her skirt to cover her pale legs and patted the dust off her clothes. Perhaps she should take off her hat, too, she thought suddenly. It was rude not to, but she just knew her hair was a terrible mess underneath.
Well, that was a treat. But never mind. Are you only growing medicinal herbs? Why do it yourself?
To sell them.
What? This many?
Claude was baffled, and Agnes understood why. Medicinal herbs were the kind of thing you bought in adequate supply when needed, not something you grew yourself, especially if you were nobility. At any rate, the number of medicinal herbs a person could grow in their back garden wouldn't fetch very much money at all.
What do you want to sell them for?
To make money, of course. To fund my new life.
Your new life?
Commoner life. Agnes's answer made the mushroom prince's shoulders slump.
You're still going on about that then?
Agnes didn't like his dismissive tone. But regardless, she needed capital before embarking on her new life. That was a fact.
Can you get all the money you need just selling these?
Not at all. No, I'll have to engineer them so that...
Engineer?
Claude looked interested, but Agnes bit her tongue. Listen, it's kinda confidential, so would you...
Agnes?
Claude took hold of her hand, cutting her off as she was about to ask him to leave. A black, funnel-shaped mushroom popped up on the back of his black-gloved left hand. She thought it must have been Craterellus cornucopioides, but it was the same black as Claude's glove and looked more like some strange sewn-on embellishment. Agnes noticed what he was wearing. The same kind of simple shirt and trousers as yesterday, only with gloves on. It looked weird, but maybe it was some sort of royal or knight policy to wear gloves all the time?
We're close though, aren't we? Can't you tell me?
Our little arrangement has nothing to do with my current business venture. Anyway, it's not that interesting anyway.
Agnes shook her head, and Claude responded by taking hold of her hand. As if on cue, white mushrooms came popping up. She thought they were more Caphophilus virginius at first, but upon closer inspection, the caps had radiating lines running down them. It was actually Coprinellus disseminatus, and there were a lot of them. The little white mushrooms grew in thick clusters, leaving Claude's right arm looking like a big white mound and completely obscuring the black of his glove beneath. I want to know everything there is to know about you. I won't let you go unless you tell me, you know.
Claude fixed her with his gray eyes and smiled. It was a nice smile, Agnes thought. But this was still coercion. 3 small brown mushrooms sprang up on his arm with audible popping sounds. Agnes sensed Claude turn his head ever so slightly, his eyes focusing for a moment on these new points of interest. Agnes knew that they were Russula compacta, a very fragile kind of mushroom with easily crumbling flesh. Claude's eyes kept flicking back and forth between the mushrooms and her face. Agnes suddenly started to wonder if Claude was acting this way to get as many mushrooms out of her as possible. Milking her for mushrooms made far more sense than him actually being interested in her. As odd of a consolation as it was, that very mistaken thought relieved Agnes, and she nodded. Claude clearly took this as her giving him permission to harvest the mushrooms, because he instantly let go of her and started gently plucking them off and putting them into his pockets. He treated the Russula compacta with extra care. So his goal really was to sprout as many mushrooms as he could after all. Agnes gazed at the blue mushroom brooch Claude wore pinned to his shirt. She was beginning to get extremely tired of both him and his whole shtick.
What kind of engineering, then?
After finishing harvesting every last little shroom, Claude pressed her again. Agnes sighed. I'm receiving blessings from the spirits.
Blessings?
My late father was a native of the neighboring kingdom, and it's through his bloodline that I inherited my peach blossom hair, and the blessings granted by the spirits who live throughout the land. Just as the kingdom of Visage had its royal family with their dragon's blood, the country of her heritage had close ties with spirits. My plan, she went on, is to commune with the spirits in this area to receive their blessing, which will hopefully make the medicinal herbs even more potent so I can sell them at increased prices. Then I can make a greater profit. It's a little sneaky, but it works.
I see.
A lot of people refuse to even believe in the existence of spirits, but Claude, luckily, didn't seem to be one of them. You're not freaked out? Agnes steeled herself for his response. She was fully expecting him to tear her idea to shreds, but he merely tilted his head curiously.
No, that sounds marvelous, actually. I'd love to see it.
Uh-oh, did I just dig a big hole for myself? As Claude continued to gaze at her with rapt fascination, Agnes felt her spirits sink. Getting him to leave quietly was not looking likely anymore. But, okay. But promise you won't laugh?
Of course not.
The power of a handsome young man's smile. She couldn't back down now. Reluctantly, Agnes turned to a nearby herb, plucked it, and held it aloft. Then she took a deep breath. Spirits, how are you doing? Agnes's voice was sing-songy and light, like she was speaking to a child. 3 balls of light, some of the spirits in the garden, began to materialize. The light balls floated in front of Agnes as if to say hello. Then they seemed to notice the herb she was holding. Hello, spirits. I've got a request for you today. Could you bless this herb just a little? Agnes put her hand to her ear, awaiting a response. The light bulbs began to flicker. She couldn't hear them, but she knew they were asking why. I need money if I'm going to live as a commoner. I plan to work too, of course, but I need money up front to rent a room, you know? So, what I want is to sell these plants if you can bless them for me. I can charge high prices if you do that. They'll sell like hotcakes. Oh wait, do you know what hotcakes are? Anyway, what I mean is, people will love them. The light balls flickered rapidly as if to say, we understand. The phrase, people will love them, seemed to have made them happy, Agnes realized. She went on, I wanted to harvest wild plants from the forest, but I can't do that right now. So I've been growing my own. I only managed to grow a few, but would you please bless them? The light balls swooped and swirled in the air before zooming over to the herb. The green leaves began to change color, turning orange. Wow! Thank you, little ones! See you again soon! Agnes waved, and the spirits twirled in the air as if in response before zooming off to places unknown. She breathed a sigh of relief. It worked! She'd received the spirit's blessing. Now, she turned back to face Claude. He was standing there, jaw agape. A second later, he imitated Agnes's sigh of relief. Whew, that was not what I was expecting. Agnes knew what Claude meant, and she was embarrassed. But she hadn't wanted to show him in the first place. He'd made her. Communing with the spirits sounds like it should be a beautiful, ethereal thing. But no, it was like that. It wasn't as if she could have a back and forth, in-depth verbal discussion with them. So she was forced to rely on pantomime and child speak. It had worked well to begin with, and now she was afraid to let up in case she ruined a good thing. So now she was stuck doing this. After all, sometimes the spirits ignored her requests. It wasn't like reasoning with a human being. It required a lot more effort on her part. Well, sorry to burst your bubble. I'm sure it does look like I'm just talking to myself like a crazy person. Philip said as much. He always hated it. That's why I went so long without calling on the spirits. But now she needed money to start her commoner life. She needed the spirits' help. Claude's frown was growing deeper and deeper. Agnes felt her heart sink. He was really that put off by me? The thought made her feel sad somehow. You showed Philip this? Yes. Well, it's more like he walked in on me doing it sometimes. Did you sprout mushrooms on Philip often? Claude was still frowning, and he was going off subject. Agnes wasn't sure why he was asking. Still, she thought back on her time with Philip to answer him. At first, yes. But at some point, they stopped sprouting on him almost entirely. Was that because you grew to trust Philip? I don't think it was that. It's more like I didn't feel so on edge around him anymore. The mushrooms had stopped around the same time that Agnes had begun to see Philip as a troublesome little brother. At some point, he'd stopped being a man in her eyes and more of a burden she'd been made to bear. I see. Claude fell silent. He's acting weird, but he doesn't seem annoyed with me. It's more like something else has upset him. Agnes wasn't sure what was wrong with him. I don't think it's creepy, your spirit thing. Just sort of surprising. Claude stepped closer to Agnes, and peered at the medicinal herb she was still clutching.
You were surrounded by this warm-looking light while you were talking. Was that the spirits?
You could see them?
Up until now, the only other person Agnes knew who could actually see the spirits
Was her late father.
A few others seemed to be able to sense them, though. If Claude saw the light balls too,
That meant he could see the same thing Agnes saw.
not clearly. It just looked brighter around you for some reason.
Even that was enough. Agnes felt less alone now. The thought made her heart glad. Not many people can see them, you know. Maybe this is because of your dragon's blood? She'd always secretly thought the whole visage royals have dragon blood thing was some kind of fairy tale. But perhaps it was real. And stronger than she'd ever thought.
It might be. Either that, or the spirits decided to show themselves to me, because they can see how deeply I care for you.
Claude gave her a dazzling smile, and Agnes smiled wryly back. How far was Claude willing to take their ruse anyhow? Was there any limit to how serious he was going to take this? We're not in public now. You don't have to pretend you're really in love with me.
But I mean it. At any rate, you looked beautiful talking to those spirits.
Yes, you can drop the act.
I'm serious.
His dark gray eyes were fixed upon her. Agnes knew it was all part of the contract, part of the plan. But being stared at so closely by such a handsome man, she couldn't help being shaken. With a satisfying whump noise, a snail-shaped mushroom sprouted out of the toe of Claude's boot. It was cream-colored, with a glossy brown part on top that made it look like it was covered in caramel sauce. It was a Cryptoporus volvatus, clearly. Claude's eyes slid irresistibly down to look at the mushroom. His face lit up as he drank in its tempting sight. Agnes wondered why he even bothered to try to hide his excitement. I understand you want as many mushrooms to sprout as possible, but you don't need to use trickery to get what you want.
No, you've got it wrong. I really am serious.
You're saying you don't want the mushrooms?
No, I want them.
Claude bent over and plucked the mushroom from his boot, carefully pocketing it. His pockets were overflowing with mushrooms today already. Agnes worried about what the palace staff thought of Claude, returning from his outings with pockets stuffed full of mushrooms. Well, I want to get these herbs sold while they're still fresh. So, if you'll excuse me...
Wait, Agnes. I'll go with you.
It looked like Claude hadn't had his fill of mushrooms yet. It was hard to say no to him. He was like a mushroom addict dying for a fix. And there was no time to spend arguing with him. Agnes headed back to her room to change out of her dusty dress.
These are amazing, miss. Wherever did you get them?
The shopkeeper was unable to hide his excitement, eyes sparkling as he gazed hungrily at the little yellow herbs. Usually, the obvious answer to his question would be the forest. But a noble young lady like Agnes surely hadn't been foraging in the woods. Agnes was going to hide the facts a little, but that was only because the shopkeeper wouldn't believe the truth anyway. Oh, I started growing some in the garden for fun, but they turned a funny color.
You grew these in a garden? But how? What kind of soil? How much sun exposure? How much water, fertilizer? You must tell me how you did it.
I didn't do anything special, really. It was a coincidence. I think our garden just has good growing conditions. Agnes shrugged, not wanting to get into it. The shopkeeper heaved a huge sigh.
A coincidence, huh? I see. Well, if you keep growing herbs of this quality, You'll put all the wholesalers out of business.
They're that good? Agnes posed the question tentatively, and the shopkeeper nodded with a look of marvel on his face.
These are more potent than usual herbs. Many times over, in fact. They're worth a lot. And you can't get this kind easily, you know. It's a rare species, especially nowadays.
Did something happen?
Oh, there's this sickness going around affecting young kids. The usual herbs don't do much for it. Everyone's doubling up on doses. That's why supplies have dwindled. Well, thank you, miss. This will be a big help.
The shopkeeper offered Agnes a sum of money much higher than she'd been expecting. She was shocked, and felt guilty at the same time. Maybe she shouldn't have brought spirit-blessed herbs. Still, it sounded like they'd be put to good use treating the illness that was going around. Maybe that made it okay for Agnes to do what she did? Reaching for the money, Agnes was distracted by her thoughts and ended up bumping hands with the shopkeeper. A large, purple mushroom that looked like a clump of flower petals sprouted on his arm. All the color drained from the shopkeeper's face as he stared at it.
Is that a fungal mutation of Polyporus umbellatus? The mushroom with medicinal fever-reducing properties?
The shopkeeper quickly plucked the mushroom and began examining it from all angles.
Unmistakable! It's the new strain, Faveratus dissipaeratus! Please let me purchase this mushroom! With one of these, I can make a large amount of antipyretic medicine!
Oh, yes, of course. The shopkeeper began rummaging in his lockbox while shooting looks of awe at the mushroom. Meanwhile, a certain mushroom fetishist was also gazing with longing at the purple mushroom. Luckily, he'd the good sense to keep his mouth shut about it.
This mushroom can only be found in a limited number of areas where conditions are favorable. Even a small amount goes for a high price. And they're out of season right now. I can't even get a tiny stalk. They don't last long either. Once the petal parts crumble off, the medicinal properties are all but lost. To find such a fresh specimen, it's like some kind of miracle. I must make haste and turn it into medicine at once.
Perhaps spotting the desire in Claude's eyes was what had made the shopkeeper hurry even more. He pushed the payment into Agnes's hands before disappearing into the back of the shop with an air of uncontained glee, mushroom cradled carefully in his cupped palms.
Agnes,
No, I will not sprout you one of your own!
Oh, okay.
Claude nodded sadly. He already has pockets full of mushrooms and he wants even more? The mushroom fetishist's fungal lust was even greater than Agnes thought.
You seem very skilled at bartering,
Claude commented as they left the shop. Well, I'm an ex-commoner, remember? I sell mushrooms at that shop a lot. That's where I sold my dresses and the skirts I made too. I'm a regular there.
Oh yes, you talked about selling your dresses. So, you sold all of them?
Claude looked incredulous, but Agnes nodded. I only wore drab and boring dresses to appease Philip, but I've managed to sell most of them. The ones nobody could ever want, I cut up and made into slightly cuter skirts.
What do you mean, to appease Philip?
Oh, right. At home, Agnes and her family often talked about Philip this way, but it must have sounded odd to an outsider. She couldn't expect Claude to know what she was talking about either. Philip was always going on about how I shouldn't wear bright colors or eye-catching jewelry. He said I stood out enough on account of my hair, and I should try to mitigate the effects by dressing down.
He said that to you? And you listened to him?
Yes. If I went against him, he wouldn't shut up about it. It was such a headache. Anyway, he was right. People hate my hair. I wouldn't mind so much if it only affected me, but I didn't want people looking down on my family just because of my appearance. Claude rubbed his chin thoughtfully.
Because of who Philip and his mother are, most of the nobility didn't deign him worth the time of day. But over the past few years, his image really improved. I thought maybe he had finally matured and started to act more like a real royal, until I witnessed that awful behavior he exhibited the other day. Did you have something to do with his improved image when you were engaged, Agnes?
Well, not very much. I would remember the names of influential people and remind Philip of them at parties. He never could remember anyone's name. And I would prop him up during discussions when it was clear he wasn't listening properly. Oh, and I made sure to school him on manners and etiquette as well. He never bothered much about that kind of thing before me.
Oh yes, that'll be what did it then. So it was all down to you. Fundamentally, Philip hasn't really changed at all.
So, Philip's reputation benefited from our engagement, did it? Which means my efforts hadn't been in vain. Not that Philip was any of her business anymore. As they strolled through the streets, they heard raised voices. Probably some sort of quarrel. Disagreements are commonplace where people gather. The same ring true for commoners and aristocrats alike. The aristocrats are just better at hiding it behind a veil of decency. Agnes had never wanted to get involved in the gossip and backstabbing. That was another reason why she dressed down. Everything she did to protect her family from any kind of trouble. But despite her best efforts, she brought scandal to her name and theirs. The thought made Agnes feel so despondent. As she sighed, Claude frowned down at her.
Agnes, you liked Philip that much?
Agnes's eyes widened. What? No, I don't feel anything for him. He was older than me, but acted like a bratty younger brother. But he was like family. Or he was going to be family. That's what I told myself. Philip was just her ex-fiancé. Her annoying, ridiculous fiancé. She felt no lingering sense of connection to Philip or their engagement. But she was still shocked. Shocked to have been betrayed so abruptly by someone she considered family. She fell silent. Claude took her hand, as if trying to comfort her. A white mushroom suddenly sprouted on his shirt. Agnes recognized the white, finger-like strings hanging down like weeping willow fronds. The mop mushroom, Hericium erinaceus. He grinned and snatched it up with a practiced air. Claude was dressed down today again, but he couldn't hide his handsome face or regal air. Passers-by kept looking at him. His face was so dazzling that no one seemed to notice the white mushroom blooming on his shirt. Perhaps they just mistook it for a ruffle. The stares bothered her, though. She was embarrassed. Of course she was. She was walking through town, holding hands with a man. It may have been part of the ruse, but Agnes thought being seen in town together would have been enough. The hand-holding, though, was overkill. She looked up at Claude, meaning to complain, but instead, he looked down at her with the sweetest smile. Claude?
Philip is a fool, but I owe him one. Without him, I never would have met you, Agnes.
Claude gazed into her eyes. Agnes felt her heart skip a beat. She was at a total loss for words. Just then, a red mushroom and a white one bloomed on Claude's shirt. The little white mushroom was Capophilus virginius, and the red-capped mushroom with the white dots was Amanita muscaria. Needless to say, the sight of them made a certain pair of dark gray eyes sparkle.
Agnes knew it'd be churlish of her to complain about this onslaught of mushrooms. Part of their contract involved keeping Claude well supplied, after all. She wished he'd be more aware of his good looks. Then again, he was a prince. Born into privilege and good looks, he was clearly oblivious as to how he came across to others. Anyway, she thought, he's not happy to have met me. He's happy to have met my mushrooms. She needed to stay cool and just respond normally. But as she watched Claude happily pick the mushrooms off his chest, a series of yellow-brown capped mushrooms began popping up. They were clearly Gymnopilus junonius. So many of them sprouted that it looked like Claude's white shirt was covered in elaborate embroidery. Thank you for the compliment. Everyone hates my hair except my family. I know you only said it to get mushrooms out of me, but still, thank you. Agnes bowed stiffly, and Claude came to a sudden halt. They were still holding hands, so she was forced to stop as well. They stood there, beside a horse-drawn cart. The mushrooms clinging to Claude's chest stopped waving in the breeze too. Agnes looked up at him, in confusion. His dark gray eyes were clouded over with anger?
You're wrong, Agnes.
But Claude trailed off, biting his lip and huffing with frustration.
The next time you go selling stuff, bring me along. Medicinal herbs and mushrooms are in high demand, right? I don't want you catching the attention of bandits.
Agnes's parents used to say the same thing. That was why she only made infrequent trips to town. Anyway, she knew the shopkeeper. She'd be fine, as long as word didn't get out about her being the supplier. Thank you, but you're a very busy man, and—
If you don't want me to go with you, then I'll send Maurice instead. Just let me know, please.
Claude fixed her with his dark gray eyes, until she finally relented and nodded her assent.